Hello, I am Tom Wickert. I am the Vice President of Culinary for Chateau Retirement Communities. I have been with the Chateau for almost 14 years now. I started off in restaurants when I was 18 years old. I went to a couple restaurants and worked. I get to work at a fine dining restaurant in Cleveland, Ohio, where I really liked it. I then decided to go to Culinary Institute of America in New York. I did that in 1994 and graduated. Then I moved to Arizona because I couldn't, take Ohio anymore. So I moved to Arizona. And then from there, I worked at a few restaurants, some corporate restaurants, and then I ended up working at Ruth Chris Steakhouse, which moved me up here to be executive chef in the Bellevue restaurant. And from there, I ended up going into get a job at Chateau. My day-to-day job is usually I'm working on the systems and the structure for the culinary department, trying to get the consistency throughout the buildings, and then I also will go to visit the buildings and just oversight and make sure things are going well, and always there for support of the buildings, and any way I can help the culinary directors in each building do their day-to-day jobs is what I'm looking for. Having that connection with the residents, whether it's for me, it's whether I go down and I see them in the dining rooms, or if I'm brewing beer and I do the beer tastings, the wine tastings I do. I did some pickles with them last week. That was really a big hit. They liked that. So just trying to do some things with the residents that I do, that I have knowledge of, to pass it on to them. I think that's really a good connection for the residents, and they really seem to appreciate the learning stuff all the time that they might not have known before. So they always talk about like things they've done in their past lives, growing up. Like they had a recipe that their grandma made or their mom made for them, and they said, have you ever made that before? And we're like, yeah, we've made that, or we could make that, or they'll give us a recipe sometimes that they might have had from when they were a kid. And when they see something on the menu, they're like quite sure what it is, and they might ask us what that is or where it comes from. And then, sometimes like when I did beer tastings, some of the residents would go back, they taste a beer, and they bring them back to some memory they had when they were, like there was someone who had in the service in the Philippines, years ago, and he was like, oh, and I had this beer in the Philippines, and this was very similar to that, or things of that nature come up, especially with the beer tastings and wine tastings. And then even when I do, other like food demos or just going through the dining room and the menus that we put together, it always brings back really nice memories for the residents from their past. Well, I always liked beer, probably since before I was able to even drink beer. When I was in culinary school back in 1994, I learned about some beer there. We did some classes, and we were, one of our hobbies to do when we were in school was to drink beer. Sometimes not the greatest beer in the world, but we did have access to some really cool beers, and I got to do that with some of my friends from culinary school. And then when I finished up culinary school, I got more interested in trying different kinds of beers. At that point, there really wasn't that many kind of beers in the United States, mostly just the macro brewers like Budweiser and Miller and Coors and stuff. I did try to make some beer when I lived in Arizona, and it was pretty much a failure because it was really hot and it didn't come out so good. When I got to the Chateau, there was another employee that was making wine at the time. He made some wine for the residents. Pretty basic stuff, just making grape juice and fermenting it. But I said, hey, you want to make beer? So we decided to make beer, and Chateau said, yeah, go ahead, make it a activity for the residents. So we started doing it in a bucket with all the basic stuff, and I have just kind of escalated it since over the past probably 10 years, 12 years I've been working at the Chateau. So now it's got to a point where it's kind of a big thing that I've got going on. so well, I like it because it's basically like a mini professional brewery. So that's kind of what my goal was to get. So it's not 100% like that, but for the most part it is. Brewing is always the same process. It's just a little bit different how you get to the end point. But I think I like the setup. I like the space I'm in. And I just think the one main thing about brewing beer that I really like is I get to take these raw ingredients and I turn it into beer. I think one of the main things I get from people when they'll taste one of my beers is they'll say, "Wow, that's better than I thought it was going to be." So it's the same as cooking, right? You got your ingredients over here, and then the finished product comes out really nice. So beer's a little bit different because no one does it, and then it also turns out to be an alcoholic beverage. So that's another bonus to it, I guess. But most people, that's one of the few things that you can actually do, and it comes out pretty much just as good as you could buy in the store. So that's kind of cool.
All right, so this is the Chateau brew house that I use to brew beer here. So we'll go through the components of this. So this is a hot liquor tank. This is basically where we put the hot water in to get the right temperature to mash in the grains. There's a coil in there that will recirculate the water through there. So when it goes over to the next kettle, it stays nice and hot throughout the whole process, same equal temperature. This is the mash tun, as they would call it. It's got a false bottom on it. So when I put the grain in there, it does not get stuck and come through here. So the hot liquor goes in here. Once the temperature is correct, I've got the grain in here. I'll put it in here and I will mash it for roughly probably 60 minutes. And then I can take that from there and I will do a little bit of a recirculation. That just clarifies the worts. And that's what the wort is, what beer is before it gets fermented, the liquid that comes through after the mash. So once the mash is complete, there's still hot water here, and we're going to do what we call a sparge. And what that's going to do is I'm going to drain this slowly. We'll pump it through to this boil kettle here. And as that's coming out, hot water is going in and it's rinsing the grains off. So we'll get every bit of sugar I can get off of the grain. And then it's going to go into the boil kettle and we'll boil that for, usually I do stick to a 90-minute boil. That's going to get some depth of color to the beer. It's also going to make sure that it boils out any maybe some impurity or flavors that might come from that. Once the beer is done, I will run up to this right here, which is a chiller. So what that is, there's a coils that go in there very tightly. Cold water goes in, it runs through the coils, and then the wort goes through as well. And as it touches those cold coils, it cools down the wort. So this will go from 180 degrees down to about 65 degrees if the water's very cold. So, and that goes right through there. It goes into the fermenter, which is right here. This is a conical fermenter. This is a coil that goes through the middle of it to keep things temperature good. But once the wort is inside here, I get that settled in. I'll add the yeast to it, and basically it's going to be good to go. It's conical because it's got to form a cone, so all the drop out from the yeast will go to the bottom, and then I can dump it out. Or I have a little arm up here, a racking arm that will go above that, so it won't even, when I empty it out, it will not even go in that. And the coil is hooked up to this chest full of ice water, and those hoses will go into in here, and that keeps it cold. I'll set the temperature I want it to, and it'll keep the fermentation right at the same temperature that I want throughout that whole process. So, yeah, that's how it goes. But then it'll take about anywhere from 10 to 14 days to ferment. I will take a gravity reading of it, which tells me how much sugar I started with and how much sugar has been eaten by the yeast and turned into alcohol. So once I get my terminal gravity, which is a specific number I want, then I know that it's done. When it stops moving, the beer is done. There's no more sugar for it to consume. So once that is done, I will usually give it a nice cold shot with some colder water in there, see if I can get it down as cold as I can. That just helps drop out anything that's still left into it to the bottom of the conical. And then from there, it goes to the keg, and then it goes into a kegerator where I will dose it with carbon dioxide for usually I do for about a week usually. I do it nice and slow to the proper carbonation level that I want the beer to get to, and then it's pretty much ready to drink. I do like to let beer sit for at least 2 or 3 weeks. And there are particular styles of beer that you want to lager in that temperature range, cold 35, 36 degrees for longer to let it sit. The flavor definitely changes over the course of a month or two in that process. Well, the great thing about this is it's pretty much a miniature professional brewing system, very much the same. There's some certain things that are not. In a large brewery, you'd have a control panel where you would move around you can turn the pumps on and off. I've got 2 pumps down here with all these hoses. I do have to turn valves myself and turn on and off pumps and rotate hoses. So that's a little bit different, but the general idea is the same. And the great thing also too is I got these beautiful floors that are cement. So if I spill things, I've got drains to go into. I've got lots of storage in here. It's nice and quiet back here. I don't disturb the residents. And I've got actually enough room that the residents can come in and watch me make beer. From the doorway in, there's a little bit of space. And I have a nice ramp that comes up as well. So I can get a wheelchair and some walkers can come up as well. So it's very accessible for the residents. And that was kind of some of the point too, as well as just the overall size of the car. So over here on this is some of the small stuff goes. These are the tri-clamps. These are some gaskets that when for the hoses and some of the equipment. This is for when I put in the oxygen. I oxygenate the wort before I put the yeast in, which helps the yeast do its thing. And just various little things, funnel, some tools. I use that wrench a lot. And then I got a couple kegs here. And then this stuff is some random things for just mostly for the to get the oxygen in the beer. So, and some paddles. My big paddle that I use to stir the wort or stir the mash, and some little ones that I had from back when I was making it in a bucket. But I want to get a pH from the mash as I'm going, then I can make adjustments. I do add things to the water, gypsum, sodium chloride, and some Epsom salt. And sometimes I'll add some lactic acid, or I'll add some baking soda. Those 2 things can move the pH needle back and forth. So I want it to be about 5.2 to 5.6 in the mash kettle. So that's one thing I do use as far as that goes. I can show you this real quick because I have it right here. And this is what I get the reading for the gravity. So yes, this little test tube thing here, and then this. So I'll get the wort out of there. I'll get the temperature to 60 degrees, and I'll float this inside, and then these numbers will tell me what the gravity is. So when the wort is done and it's going in the fermenter, I will get a reading of anywhere, depending on how much malt I used. But let's just say it was from this, it was like 1.050. I'll just say 50 because that's kind of the numbers I use. Then that's the starting gravity, all the sugar in it. Sugar's a little bit heavier, so when I put that in there, it doesn't go down as far. It floats up a little higher. But as the yeast does its thing in the fermenter, I will take a reading out of the. I've got a little port here that will release some small amount of the wort out of the fermenter, and I can then I'll take another reading. So if it starts off at 1.050, then I'm looking for it to get down to about 10. So I will check it, and if it's at 20, I know it's not done yet. But once it gets to a spot and it stops moving after like 2 or 3 days, then I know the beer is finished. There's no more sugar for it to eat. So as it eats the sugar, it gets lighter. So that measurement just kind of floats a little bit. It drops down a little further. So it was here and then drops down a little bit closer now. So that's how you measure the alcohol content as well. This beer is The last beer I had left from the batch is dark mild, not labeled or anything because I'm gonna use it, but this is gonna go into a competition at the end of the week. I'm taking it over. So, but when I get finished with the beer, it goes in a keg, which I can take out of the tap and we can drink it right out of the tap, no problem. Or I have a nice, I'll show you that too. I've got a handy dandy little toy. It's called a beer gun. Put the violet in. So it's got this little gun. I can put CO2 in there, and then the beer goes in here. So what I can do is take that out of the, hook that up to the keg, and I can bottle the beer from there into those bottles. The nice thing about this thing is that it I can put a little bit of CO2 in the bottle to get all the oxygen out, and then I can put the beer inside of it and then cap it. So, and then that's what it looks like. And this is 12-ounce bottles for competition. It's easier for me to do 22-ounce bottles because it's just less work. So, but the thing about this is great is it puts the CO2 in the bottle because oxygen is your enemy for beer. It will destroy beer, so you don't want oxygen in your beer.
Well, the brew culture is really cool up in here in the Pacific Northwest because I think when I've had the opportunity to meet some professional brewers, and there's a really good tight knit community there. They're always open to help out, even like if I'm a home brewer, but they'll help out home brewers and get them involved. They'll do collaboration beers with them. And then also just being the Pacific Northwest, I mean, we get the hops are here, right? So Yakima's not that far away. 75% of the hops used in beer comes out of Yakima, Washington. So that's really important. We do grow our own grain up here too. So malt up in Skagit Valley has a lot of malting up there, as well as just north into Canada. So our area is really good for that. The brewery scene is really good. Seattle's got a lot, but every city has 2 or 3, 4 breweries in it, all different. And the main thing with breweries too seems to be there's always a theme to the breweries, which is kind of fun too, to go to different breweries with different themes. But the culture is really, really interesting because it's very, it's a good brotherhood of brewers. They're very, like if I needed something, if I went over to a brewery and say, hey man, can I get a few ounces of hops or something? Probably would do it. They'd probably give it to me. So that's kind of cool. If I went to a restaurant, they wouldn't do that. So I think what I do with my cooking and brewing is I usually do what I like to drink or eat myself. My philosophy is usually the fewer the ingredients, the better, and to do things the correct way. So when I'm cooking, I like to follow procedure pretty well, cook it correctly, use nice, clean, fresh ingredients. If you use too many ingredients, they can get kind of mushed together and you don't know what you're really eating or you can't taste it very well. Same goes with beer. Beer is a very sanitized process, so it's very important to be very sanitized, keep everything very clean. That's one of the main things. And then, just using really nice ingredients and then following the procedure of making your beers and getting to the end point of the right malt, the right hops, the right yeast, the right water, all that stuff. Make sure that's all top notch, and then you follow procedure, and you should come out with a good beer every time. The beer that I won a gold medal for was in the National Homebrew competition. That was last year. It was a Scottish Light beer, which is a low ABV version of a Scottish ale. It was really good. It had nice caramel notes to it. It's one of my favorite beers to drink. I do like British style ales, so that kind of fell into that category. I entered into a couple other competitions and it did very well there as well. So, and to get that was pretty cool because that's it. It's one thing to get a medal in a local competition with maybe you're going up against 15, 20 different beers, but national competition was pretty cool over the whole country because I think there's probably like 12 different cities in the country that do a first round, and then once you got past that to go to the next round. So it was a really cool experience, and I was super psyched. If I'm gonna do a competition, one thing about competitions is you have to do it to a style. So a style different, like Scottish Light was a style, and there's different parameters within that style that you need to hit. So if you're going to come up with a beer and you're going to and put it in that style category in a competition, you're pretty much going to need to stay in that style. I have made beers before where I've just been like, oh, I have this and I've got that. Let's see what this kind of comes out to. Or I've also done it before where I've said, I'm going to just try this. I'm going to mix this hop with this other hop and these malts together and see what it comes out to be like. So you can get pretty creative with beer and make something really amazing and cool. But if you want to do competitions, you pretty much need to stick to that style. Because if you make a beer and you put it to a style that doesn't hit those parameters, you're not going to win a medal. So I just got done making a couple beers for some competitions for the residents too. I will probably make one. The next beer I make will probably just I've got some random hops that are experimental hops with no name on them. So I'll just probably make a beer out of that. That won't go into a competition, but it'll probably come out really good. So yeah, so that one was I won a gold medal in the Best of the Bay competition, which is in Bellingham, and I also won Best of Show. So what they did was everybody had their gold medals, and they put all the gold medal beer together, and they judged those. So I won the Best of Show so it was the best beer of the whole competition. So one of the prize packages in the prize package for the Best of Show was one of the things was a collaboration brew with Larrabee Lager Company, which is a brewer that's up in Bellingham, which kind of goes back to the brewers being really involved and just being the brotherhood of brewers is awesome, very helpful. So I emailed the brewer, Sam, back and forth many times, and we talked about what kind of beer we want to make, and he had mentioned that he got these experimental hops from Crosby Farms in Oregon. So he's like, they sent it to me, let's make some beer out of that. So we made a beer from that, and basically it was a lager beer because that's pretty much what he does. So it was just a basic lager beer with those hops in it. We called it a spring lager because it really did not fit into a style because with all the differences of it. So we call it a spring lager. Came out really good. I named it Atomic Dog after a trail that I ride my mountain bike up in Bellingham. So I did that, which was kind of cool. And it's still on tap in Bellingham right now, but came out really good, and it's got a lot of feedback. One of the home group guys that I'm with up in Bellingham, I kind of hooked up with them. They all came up one night and drank the beer, and we all tried it. It was really good. So yeah, it just goes to show you that all those brewers are just so good they're all good brotherhood, and they just all work together. Even the home brewers, they're really, really good to us. So. Well, personally, it was cool. I mean, I've done some competitions before, and I think I'm getting better at them. So anytime you do well in a competition like that, it's kind of cool. I like that for sure. And the residents really liked it. They got a kick out of it. They've always asked me, what beer are you going to enter in the competition? And then I say, well, I'm going to do it this one. And then they'll ask me next time I see them, how'd you do? Or I'll like, well, I got a medal, or I didn't get a medal, whatever. And then the beer I did the collaboration with, I went up and got some, and I brought it down for them to try. So they got to try that. So they get kind of involved with it through me, which is kind of fun. And when I'm brewing beer, they can kind of get involved when I'm doing new beers and help me if they want to get involved with making recipes or anything. They're fine to do that. But I think they get a big kick out of it to see the brews I make, and they feel, I think, a part of it. So that's super fun. That's just that connection again with the residents is awesome. Well, I think when I do the beer tastings, they have a really good time. I think one of the things they like to do is learn some stuff. Usually when I do a beer tasting, I kind of go over some of the same stuff again. I have most of the same residents, but I do get a few different residents here and there that come in. They like to hear about the brewing process. They like to taste the beer. They give their ideas of like what they taste out of it, and what they're getting out of the beer. And then always what happens is the best part of it is that when the tasting's done, then usually the tastings will take 20 minutes maybe for the tasting, but then they'll hang out for another half hour, 45 minutes, and they'll talk with me and the other residents at the table just about their experience with, like, oh, I did Irish beer tasting last week, and a few of the residents have been to Dublin, and they had been to the Guinness brewery, and they talked about that, or like the guy, there's a couple residents who were, we know when they were stationed overseas, the beers they had, or whenever they traveled, the beers they had, and it just goes around and around the table. So, and they always have a really good time talking about it. And then I usually just, at that point, I just pull up a chair and I just sit down and talk to them. So it's just a good connection with the residents when I do that. There's always someone who brings something up. Even in wine tastings, I do wine tastings as well, where they'll mention, oh, we went to Napa Valley. You should go. If you've been to Napa Valley, I said, no, I never been there. I'm like, oh, you gotta go. But generally, it's a place they went to, and they had a beer, and they reminded them of whatever, with their trip. So and I find that's what happens a lot with beer, especially, and wine too, I guess, is it just kind of takes you back to a time in your life and a memory when you had that beer. And food's the same way, very, very similar with food. You might, like what I was saying about the grandparents or the mother made something, and it always triggers a memory. And it's always really cool to hear about those stories. So yeah, I can't really think of anything in particular, but just so many. And every time I do another tasting, there's a new one, and new people that come in and they'll bring something up like, oh yeah, I remember this or I remember that. So it's really interesting. The culture of beer is interesting to go to into a brewery and just to see that different people hang out in there, and there's just families, and everyone's just hanging out, and then the beer's just there, just something you're drinking while you're hanging out with your friends and your family. And I think that's always with gatherings too, when you're growing up, holidays or just family gatherings, whatever it could be. There's always food involved, and there's always maybe there's some kind of drink, right? Beer, wine, whatever it could be. And that always just brings people together. Alcohol does have a very good, it has a way of making people open up a little bit and talk a little bit more than they probably normally would. So that's always something good that comes from it, So, so you get a lot of good stories out of that. But yeah, I think it's just, there's a certain thing about just those two things together that bring people together and make them think about things from their past, or recent past or very far past. I think that the main thing is that we will do whatever we can to make their family member feel happy and comfortable here. I think that's part of our mission. But I think for culinary, getting to know them and helping them out. I mean, I know it's a tough transition sometimes for new residents to come from, maybe they were in their homes and now they're coming to live here. It's a totally different situation. So we want to make them feel comfortable and let the family members know that they're taken care of. And from a culinary standpoint, whatever they need, we'll try our best to take care of them. And if there is something that we can do, we'll do it. And also to get feedback is always great too. If there's something that we didn't do or we could do better, we want to know as well. As far as the brewing, I just want to keep going with it. Try to get as many residents involved as I can. I think Bothel's going well. I want to try to get it going in over at Chateau Pacific and Chateau Valley Center. Try to get the residents involved there too. I think the more time goes by, I think the new residents coming in, if there's that people who maybe drink beer, there's more of them. So I think that will only get better. So I'm looking forward to just expanding that a little bit to the other buildings for the most part. And as far as the food goes, yeah, we're just going to keep doing what we do and always trying to stay on the cutting edge of new things happening.